to Flat, Cool, and Acid-Free, an OK State Archives podcast, bringing you stories about Oklahoma State University and Oklahoma. I'm Nina Thornton, multimedia producer for the OSU Libraries. On this episode,
1890s, most people in Oklahoma are working in agriculture. So what you're going to do is provide expertise that's going to help the most people. And so agriculture is the way you can provide information to the most number of people to improve their lives.
Samantha Mackey and David Peters talk about the history of agriculture at OSU.
David, the Agriculture Experiment Station was established really quickly after OAMC was founded. How did the Ag Experiment Station come about?
You know, the citizens of Stillwater gave 200 acres, or provided 200 acres for the college and experiment station, all right? The actual college was located on roughly 5 to 10 acres. The other 190 acres was devoted to the Agriculture Experiment Station. Now, there's some who say that the citizens of Stillwater and Payne County wanted the experiment station as much or more than they wanted the college. You have to remember, these are people who have just settled here within the previous year or two. They're coming from all over the country, and no one really knows what kind of crops, what kind of livestock, what's going to do well in this environment. So what they were hoping for was an experiment station where all those tests could take place, and then the experiment station then can make recommendations to them. So they were really looking forward to the experiment station as much as they were the college. The experiment station is established right away. I mean, the first classes are held, December 14th, 1891. The first thing that's going on campus, they're plowing the whole campus because they're going to convert most of it into an agricultural experiment station. The first buildings on campus are financed through Hatch Act. The Hatch Act was a federal program that provided funding for agricultural experiment research. And so Hatch Act funds are used to build our first building on campus, which was a barn, which is located roughly where, the used to be the College of Business building. I think it's a general administration building now. But there was a barn at that location. The second building on campus was a chemistry lab that was also to be used for the agricultural experiment station. So you can see the agricultural experiment station really had a much greater impact initially on the Stillwater community than the college did. Now, one of the issues early on with the agricultural experiment station is there were some people who thought it should be a money-making proposition. So they should be in there growing what they need to grow, sell, and it should be a way to finance the college. Others looked at it as a source of seed. They wanted them to be able to produce seeds that then they would sell to farmers in the area. And actually, it took a while to convince people that really the research that was going on was the most important thing that they could do. And they began doing research almost immediately.
So what kind of research was the Ag Experiment Station doing?
So they brought in fruit trees, nut trees, just regular trees to see what kind of trees would do well in this environment, what kind of production they could get from those. The other trees were just brought in for making things like fence posts. Because you have to remember, this is an open prairie, and so they were trying to figure out ways to help farmers, and fence posts is one thing that farmers would need. We had a vineyard for a while. It would be right north of where Morrill Hall is now. So we had vineyards, fruit trees, orchards. We had then crops. They brought in all kinds of grain crops, corn, wheat, oats, you name it, barley. They tried to grow it. They brought in different varieties too of all of those things. They brought in then different breeds of livestock. So we had a number of beef cattle breeds, dairy cattle breeds, swine, poultry, once again, you name it, we brought it in here. And we also brought in stuff from really around the world. We brought in varieties and breeds from England and other places in Europe, from South America and Central America. So they were really, it was kind of a smorgasbord of stuff they were trying, because they really didn't know what was going to do well here. So they tried a bunch of stuff. And most of that, all of that was under the direction of a guy named James Neal. James Neal was the first head of the Agricultural Experiment Station. He was our most experienced first faculty member, and in some regards, he was our first faculty member. Yeah, a lot of things going on. They produced bulletins. These bulletins then were distributed to farmers across the territory, trying to share what their research results were. So it it was a up and coming activity. Students, in fact, many of the students in agriculture had coursework that required them to work in the agriculture experiment station. So they had students engaged in hands-on labor helping experiment station.
That's really cool. So how has the research at the experiment station evolved over the years?
Well, so initially they were trying to figure out really to help people with subsistence agriculture. And if you remember at the time, most of our population is agriculturally based, engaged in farming and farming activities. Of course, now, a very small percentage of our population is engaged in agriculture. And so what the Agriculture Experiment Station has allowed over this period of over 100 years is this transition from a large portion of our population to a small portion of our population being able to produce the food that's necessary to feed the state. So they've always been looking at more efficient ways of doing things, better breeds, improved varieties, and they're still doing that. But also you have to think agriculture is involved in some ways in all of us our everyday lives. Even people who live in towns and communities. I mean, we do research with grass and lawn, Bermuda grasses, and so it just impacts all of our lives in a variety of different ways. So it's not just rural places with farms. Agriculture impacts all of our lives. But what they do now is they really focus on not just production, but from taking agricultural produce from the field to the table. And so it's quite a process when you think of all the things that go along with that, with what has to happen with food for it to be safely consumed by people in their home.
Yeah. So something that's talked about a lot on campus and even around the country even is the Magruder plots. So what are the Magruder plots?
So, well, first of all, the Magruder plots were named for Alexander C. Magruder. So I mentioned James Neal was the first faculty member hired and the first experiment station director. The second faculty member hired, I think, was probably Alexander C. Magruder. So Magruder comes here and he's working in agriculture. And after that first plowing was completed, he set up some plots where, and these were continuous field trials for wheat, at plots where, well, it's located where Murray Hall is and Stout Hall. So where Murray and Stout Hall are now, the Magruder plots were established. I think that first cropping year was 1892, so they got it in right away, and so they would test what yields were impacted by fertilizers and amounts of fertilizers and combination of fertilizers, no fertilizer, compost and other things. So these plots go in 1892. They, I believe, are the longest continuous field trials west of the Mississippi River. So that means this is all west of the Mississippi. These are the most extensive and over time the most complete records we have for one area in crop production. And it's, well, it's associated with wheat mostly. Now initially it was where Murray Hall and Stout Hall are. Well, when they built Murray Hall, they said, well, okay, we'll give up roughly half of the area for Murray Hall, but that's it. We're not going to, that's it. Well, so then by, I think in 1944, 43, 44, I'm sure there's some agronomists who can correct me. Well, then they wanted to build Stout Hall. Well, that meant they'd have to give up the rest of it. And they said, whoa, this is too important. So what they did is they physically moved the plots by layers, each individual plot by layers of soil out west, roughly 1 mile west, onto the agricultural experiment station now that we know is Ag Experiment Station. And it's still marked. There's a marking out. If you ever go out to the experiment station, there's a marker that identifies the Magruder plots. And so they're able to move all of those plots to their new location and not miss a year of results. And so they were able to continue using that. It was amazing. It was an amazing feat to move that land. So I think that's part of their renown, is that they actually physically moved these plots further west about a mile. But started by Alexander Magruder. They're still collecting data on those plots, and it's an amazing story.
Sounds like it.
No.
So we have a question from our audience, and the question is, how about those tractors?
Gotta love tractors. You know, I really think tractors are the epitome of agricultural, Oklahoma Agricultural and Mechanical College. I mean, it's just a wonderful blend. You know, oftentimes the Aggies and engineers would fight about stuff, but in this case, they work together, and tractors become a real, a source of power that enable us to produce more on larger plots of land than most parts of the world could. And so tractors were integral to the changes in agriculture. Also, I have a personal collection, and so I've just always enjoyed tractors. Can't have enough tractors. But to me, it's interesting to see how they've changed over time. You know, from the big steam traction engines to like Rumley oil pulls, and just the transition over time to what you have now. You have these huge tractors. Once again, you know, and these guys can cover thousands of acres with huge tractors. So anyway,
Right.
Love them tractors.
We also have a question from William, and he wants to know, how long has Ag Hall been the home of the Ag School?
So the College of Agriculture has moved. Originally, Morrill Hall, when it was built, served as the administration building and the home for agriculture. Then Whitehurst Hall, when it was built, it became the new home for the administration and agriculture. So seemed like administration and agriculture were closely associated. But Ag Hall, which we know as Farm Road and Monroe, that was built in phases. So the two wings that go east and west were built first. The first one I think was completed in the mid-50s. Then the next one was added on in the front. So by the early 60s, mid to early 60s, Ag Hall has become kind of the academic home for the College of Agriculture. To me, the experiment station still is kind of the home for agriculture at OSU.
So with all of this agricultural research, has OSU ever partnered with other schools or other organizations to conduct any of it?
Yes, we've partnered with a number of organizations, and even like currently, there's a project that we're working on that's looking at really economic inputs in crop production. And so like years ago, my father worked with what was called host plant resistance, which they were looking at how you control insects in a variety of different ways. And what they're doing now is, I mean, that's just a minor part of this. What they're doing now is they can look at crop production and evaluate moisture, fertilizer content, and so they can make adjustments as they're going across a field. Some places may need more nitrogen, other places may need less nitrogen, but how do you control the inputs in crop production to maximize both the yield and the efficiency of the operation? And they're doing that in cooperation with several other colleges. I think we have roughly 2 million, I think, out of the big pot that we're a part of. But those kind of collaborations agriculture is known for. And a lot of that has to do with funding from the U.S. Department of Agriculture. And then we oftentimes will work with other land grant colleges for those kinds of activities. So yes, we're still engaged in a variety of different things. And we do that oftentimes with partners. And we also do it not only with other colleges and universities, but we have now agricultural production businesses that sponsor or cooperate with us on partnerships as they're working on improvements. And once again, it's from production in the field all the way to the table. I mean, our Food and Agricultural Products Center, you know, looks at how you market and package and provide food safety for things in a way that people are meeting demand. So
We have a question from Allie, and she wants to know, why was our college an ag school? Like, how did it become one?
So by being a land grant college doesn't necessarily mean you're an ag school. But early on, I have to remember, Allie, in 1890s, most people in Oklahoma are working in agriculture. They're farmers. And so what you're going to do is provide the expertise that's going to help the most people. And so agriculture is the way you can provide information to the most number of people to improve their lives. So agriculture has been critical from the very beginning. You know, many of the land grant schools went by A&M, Agriculture and Mechanical. So Kansas State was Kansas Agriculture and Mechanical. Iowa State was Iowa Agricultural Mechanical. So, that's just a common theme. But it's a part of that land grant mission in those early years, especially, was to meet the agricultural needs of the population within those states.
Great, thank you. So one last question before we go. If somebody wanted more information on agriculture or agricultural research at OSU, where could they look in the collections in the archives?
So all of the ag bulletins and ag publications that came out beginning, I think, in 1892 or 93, we have all of those. If they're looking at historic information, we have that information. And much of that has been digitized. They can find that online, but we can help them locate that information. We have information on the weather. The Agriculture Experiment Station had weather notations for highs and lows and precipitation and wind speeds and all that kind of stuff. So depending on what they're looking at, they might want to look at some of our weather records that we have. Don Green did a book on the College of Agriculture as a part of the Oklahoma Centennial History Series. Those were produced roughly 25 years ago, but it's a fairly complete look at agriculture for the first 100 years of the college. And not only do we have that book, and the book is also available online, but we have his research materials in the production of that book. We've got a lot of material on agriculture. Various faculty members throughout the time of the college have donated materials. And then if they're interested in current research, the DASNR, the Division of Agriculture, Sciences and Natural Resources, or something close to that, have an excellent page where they have specific information on research. And you can go into different departments, the kind of research they're doing, general research at the experiment station. There's a lot of current information available online through the college, the Division of Agriculture. And they continue to produce bulletins. And so if you want updated information on something you're trying to do, that information is all available either through them or we also capture that information to make it available too. So there's all kinds of resources on agricultural research both in the archives and at the university.
This episode highlighted a segment from the Archives Live, a monthly video broadcast. Watch the broadcast and stay in touch with the archives by liking and following the Oklahoma State University Archives Facebook page. Find a link to that in the show notes. This episode featured Samantha Mackey and David Peters and was produced by Nina Thornton. Theme music is It's a Process, composed by Ben Stone and Finley Green, and published by BBC Production Music, PRS. From the folks at Oklahoma State University Libraries and the Archives, thanks for listening, and always remember to keep your archival material flat, cool, and acid-free.